And they snap it instead on 3rd down and goal. Wide open, McCaffrey gets it instead.
To the caller that used the 49ers yesterday on the show as an example of overcoming injuries, they were awesome last night. They haven't punted, Max, since November 30th in a football game.
I heard that stat last night, and I had to look back into it, and turns out they weren't lying. Damn, man.
9 offensive drives last night, 7 scores in the game. In the 7 scores, there were 6 touchdowns. There was a missed field goal and a turnover on the other 2 drives. The punter does not need to be active, apparently, for the 49ers, who are rolling and beat a desperate team last night. You know, I mentioned to the caller yesterday, it's fair to say that the 49ers have risen above their injury problem this year. They had massive losses on defense, right? Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and had some offensive players, even though they're very healthy now offensively, had some key offensive players out for, the portions of the season early on. I pointed out that they are an aberration, that the 49ers, no matter how great that organization is, and it's a very good organization, following, their Super Bowl appearance in 19, they went 6-10 with an absolute, mess of injuries the following season in 2020. And then after their last Super Bowl trip last year, all right, in 23, last year, 24, tons of injuries, they went 6-11. So it's not like they rise above it all the time. They are doing it now. I pointed out yesterday to the caller, look at who they've beaten, in recent weeks. The Titans, the Browns, the Cardinals, the Giants. Go back to earlier in the season. They beat the Saints. They beat the Cardinals. So a lot of their wins are against bad football teams. But last night was, yes, a team quarterbacked by 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, but a team that was desperate to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. They are still actually alive, the Colts' playoff hopes are. But they were awesome last night. They rolled to a 48-27 win. Not even close with the final smell test pick of the weekend. I had the Colts plus the points. Still a winning weekend, 6-4-1 overall. Indy did not lose last night because of Phillip Rivers. That was insane to watch him do his thing. It's been really fun to watch. Most of you know that I'm a big fan. Drew knows it, that I'm a big Phillip Rivers fan and have been throughout his career. I do think he's a Hall of Famer. I think he will be in the Hall of Fame. I never suggested he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think he is an absolute Hall of Famer. And to watch him at his craft 5 years after last playing on every offensive drive as he tried to match the 49ers, and for the most part did, what really hurt them early was a fumbled kickoff return. Indy opened the game with Rivers going 5 for 7 for like 60-something yards. They went down. He threw a touchdown pass. 49ers answered. They fumbled, the Colts did, on the ensuing kickoff. 49ers took a 14-7 lead. Then, right down the field, Rivers again, touchdown pass again. I mean, the dude last night in his pre-snap diagnosis, just to watch him work was a pleasure. 23 of 35, 277, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick 6 when they were down 14 at the end, trying to stay alive. And by the way, they did it last night with no running game, literally no running game. Jonathan Taylor was under 3 yards per carry. They have a really good receiver who's going to be a free agent, Alec Pierce, just something to keep in mind. I don't know why Indy wouldn't, try very hard to re-sign him, but Alec Pierce has size. He's got speed. He's got really good route running ability. The other guy that's got phenomenal route running ability, Max, if you were watching last night, Josh Downs, is really difficult to check. Really difficult. But the 49ers, man, wow. I mean, they control their own destiny in the NFC right now. If they win out and they play this coming weekend against the Chicago Bears, Sunday Night Football, Santa Clara, Bears, Niners, feels 80s-esque, doesn't it? Early 90s. And then they finish with Seattle at home. If they win both of those games, they are the 1 seed in the NFC. The Super Bowl in the NFC will go through Santa Clara. And by the way, it's being played in Santa Clara. So the 49ers may never leave home if they can win their final 2 games. It won't be easy to beat the Bears and the Seahawks, but I think they'll be favored in both of those games at home. I still think the Rams are the best team in the NFC. We'll do our power rankings today because I am off tomorrow and Christmas Day. And let me just wish all of you, not only a happy holidays for those of you celebrating Hanukkah right now, but a Merry Christmas as well. It's here already. Amazing that we went through almost an entire football season and arrived here on the day before Christmas Eve. But I will be off tomorrow and on Christmas Day. I will be back on Friday to do a show following Washington's game against the Cowboys on Christmas Day, which, man, not a great game. I'm going to be very interested to see what this Christmas Day lineup.
Oh, it's going to be
Dallas.
It's going to be so fun, Kevin. We're going to get
Washington.
Chris a lot of coon hoops on Christmas. Are you kidding me? This is what we've waited for.
Yeah, I mean, I used to love watching the NBA on Christmas Day, but it won't come close to 3 meaningless games. I guess Detroit's still alive. Denver's still playing for seeding, obviously, in the night game against Kansas City. Who's going to quarterback Kansas City?
Chris Oladacoon.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you what, those that argue against the 18-game schedule, this is their year, man. This is their year with quarterbacks and with injuries and the whole thing. I mean, the Christmas Day lineup. By the way, Washington put Sam Cosmi on injured reserve. So they are doing what he had a concussion. Okay, so he had that, didn't play on Saturday. But I think this is what we should be seeing is their best players kind of work their way towards injured reserve the end of the season. I would hope that Tunsil certainly doesn't play. There's no reason for him to play. I wouldn't play Terry at this point either. I don't know why you'd take your better players that are going to be part of what you want to do next year in a bounce back year, big year for everybody, and have them, risk it in these final 2 games. Really impressed last night by the 49ers. I wanted to play this piece of sound from Trent Williams. Yeah, that Trent Williams, who is, by the way, a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he'll go in as a 49er. I mean, he has zero interest in going in as a Redskin. Last night, by the way, in the call of the game, and I don't mind the Monday Night Crew. I'm fine with Buck and Aikman. Aikman was describing Trent Williams that there was some stat about him, and he said he hadn't done that since he was a Washington Commander. Come on, Troy. Even you know that. He never played for the Commanders. Trent Williams played for the Redskins. We could still say that, people. Okay, that's what they were. That's who Trent Williams played for. But Trent Williams being an 11-time Pro Bowler, all right? And now, the last 4 of his Pro Bowls and his only 3 Associated Press first team honors are all with the 49ers. He played, let's see, what did he play, 9 years with Washington? Was it 9? Yeah, it was 9 with Washington. He's now been with the 49ers. This is year 6 at 37 years old. And I wouldn't be surprised given how, his level of play if he's back for age 38. But I would imagine when he goes into the Hall of Fame, he's going in as a 49er. He did not like the way it ended here at all. What a great offensive lineman. What a great left tackle Trent Williams has been. One of the most athletic of his era by far. So this was him after the game talking about Brock Purdy, who last night threw 5 touchdown passes in a game. The first 49er to do that since Joe Montana. It was close to a perfect game for Brock Purdy. He was 25 of 34, 295 yards, 5 touchdowns, but he did have an interception late, which was kind of through the hands of a receiver, although it was a bit high on the throw if you're being nitpicky. But Purdy was outstanding last night. This was his left tackle, Trent Williams, talking about him after the game.
Yeah, I mean, just, when you're in that huddle, it's only one voice speaking, right? And you got 10 grown men staring at you. And, you can't fool grown men, right? And the confidence that he has in that huddle, no matter what phase of the game, those long play calls, just getting everybody where they need to be. I mean, he from A to Z, he does it at a really high level. And I say it all the time, he's a godsend, man, for us to get him where we got him. And obviously he's getting what he deserves now, but you can't even tell he's still the same guy from his rookie year. He's just a baller, man.
Trent Williams talking about his quarterback. That's what you want to hear, man, from your all-pro Hall of Fame left tackle. 10 grown men in the huddle, and there's only one voice, and he's got the attention of everybody. 2022 draft. Got to go back to that one. Pick 262, the very last pick in the first round. That's where the 49ers found Brock Purdy. Exception to the rule, no doubt, in terms of quarterbacks' draft history, draft stats. I've mentioned this before, but it was like 3 years ago when Purdy really emerged. I read this story about how this was not an Adam Peters selection. This was not a Kyle Shanahan selection. This was not a John Lynch selection. Brian Griese, apparently, as a scout at the time, and now what is Brian Griese? Is he the quarterback's coach with the 49ers? Something like that. Look that up. See if Griese is still the QB coach with the 49ers. I think he might be. He's the one that stood on a table and said, you guys have to look at this kid from Iowa State. I'm telling you, he has it all. Everything about him says he can do this. And that's why they drafted him with the last pick in the 2022 draft. Yes, he is currently still the QB's coach. Brian Griese is.
Wikipedia
most recently.
I was going to say, Wikipedia has an end date of 2024, so I think he's just chilling now.
Maybe he's just chilling. Yeah. Okay. Impressed 49ers, man. These playoffs, I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're kind of wide open. I mean, are we forgetting the Eagles and what they can do, especially defensively when they get Jalen Carter back, if they get Lane Johnson back? What do we think about the differences between Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams? I still think the Rams are the best team there. Does Tampa emerge? Do they win that season finale against Carolina or their last two games? What about the Packers without Micah Parsons? I mean, I thought they were the better team in a game they lost against the Bears on Saturday night. And then in the AFC, the top two seeds, very likely to be, not guaranteed to be because of Jacksonville's run here, and Buffalo's still alive, but New England and Denver. I mean, crazy. We've talked about this all season long, but man, the NFL with its schedule, other than the Christmas Day lineup, really, nailed it. I mean, your Saturday games this week, Houston at Chargers, Baltimore to stay alive against Green Bay at night. The Packers needing it. On Sunday, you've got, in the late window, Philly at Buffalo, and then Sunday night, Chicago at San Francisco. There's so many choices right now, Max, for the Sunday night season finale. Remember, they'll do a Saturday night that weekend too. So you'll get a doubleheader on Saturday, January 4th?
4th, yeah. Or
and
3rd,
then
yeah.
you'll get, so you'll get a primetime game, and that could be like Carolina, Tampa for the division. And then Sunday night, you may be choosing between Seattle, San Francisco. What else do we have? Chargers, Denver is a possibility for the division. Houston, Indy could still be a game for a wild card berth. Lot of choices, man. Baltimore, Pittsburgh could still be for the AFC North. You know it's not going to finish on Sunday Night Football? Washington at Philadelphia. That one is not. And that leads me to this. I got this from Lee. Lee wrote me after yesterday's show. He writes, Kevin, you're trying too hard to make the rivalry with my Eagles something it isn't. You were correct. Sirianni probably didn't even know what he was doing. He's not great at things like score and situation. But he definitely doesn't care about your team. Dallas is the only team in the division that matters to Eagles fans. We've risen above the Giants And ha, 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 the Commanders, what a lame name. I like the last part, Lee. Appreciate that. This is what I suggested yesterday. I said that it's very possible, I'm not discounting at all, that Sirianni didn't, do it intentionally, that he didn't go for the 2 intentionally to be a jerk, to try to run it up and rub it in, that he is a bit numb when it comes to these things. He has been. Look, I'm not knocking him as a head coach, as a motivator, as a leader, all of those things, because the Eagles are defending champions. I'm very well aware of that. He's been to 2, won 1. And the one he lost, they nearly won. And they are just flat out one of the best organizations right now in all of sports. And he's their on-field leader. I appreciate everything that he is. I also watch football like many of you do, including, it sounds like, Lee, an Eagles fan, who knows some of the things that he hasn't done so well over the years. And that's why I suggested it's very possible that he didn't mean to do it, that he wasn't intending to do it, that he actually thought the chart says to go for 2, which it does not. Does not say to go for 2. It says to kick when you're up 17. Now, as far as the rivalry and whether or not I'm trying too hard, maybe. I'll just remind you, Lee, the Cowboys haven't played your team 3 times in a season since 1980. Actually, that's not true. I think they played in the postseason in the divisional round. They haven't played your team in the NFC Championship game since 1980. We played you 3 times last year, including in the NFC title game. But I know how Philadelphia fans feel. I'm not, trying to create something that can't be created. Certainly off of last year, I was hopeful, very hopeful, that maybe our team, for the first time, coming out of the Snyder, reign of terror, could actually get back into the NFC East as a regular participant in rivalry games, because we were kind of excluded from a lot of that. We felt it for Dallas and Philly and the Giants, but they didn't feel it for us for a long, long time. They just didn't. I mean, when you have in your division bottom of the barrel franchise, number 1, which is what, Snyder, created here, you just kind of out of sight, out of mind. And that's what we became to the other 3 teams in the division. Not that the Giants have been great, but they've won Super Bowls, plural, since the last time we won one. Dallas certainly hasn't won anything of note. I mean, big chokers, but they've had a lot more good seasons and been in the postseason a lot more than we have. Philly has risen above every other franchise in the division. That is true right now. You cannot deny that. There have been times, and I know a little bit about the NFC East, as many of you do. There have been times when all 4 organizations were really, really solid. I mean, go back to, late 80s, 90s, when the Eagles were really, they had great players. They were drafting well. They were the Broad Street Bullies. They were incredibly defensive-oriented and led, but they also had Randall. The Giants were first-rate as an organization. Washington clearly was among the best organizations, not only in the sport, but in sports overall. And the Cowboys were still doing their thing, man. And I'm talking even when they made the switch to Jerry. I mean, they had it going on. But there's no doubt that the division right now has one franchise, one brand, not brand. Brand's the wrong way to put it, because the Cowboy brand is still, raging, very high on the scale of recognizable brands. And yes, I got everything that you guys sent me about the branding study. I'll get to that. That's planned for on the show today. And Washington ranking 32nd among 32 teams. But yeah, there's no doubt, Lee, Philadelphia has risen above the rest of the division. But I would certainly love our team to get on a roll here this year. I hope ends up being an aberration. I think there's a decent chance it will be. When I say decent chance, not a lock. They got to add some really good players. They have some work to do, because they don't have the roster to compete for what they, sort of worked their way into last year. Last year was definitely inside straight material. Not that they weren't good, not that they weren't doing it the right way, But it was primarily quarterback led. Not 100% quarterback led, but primarily quarterback led. There were other good performances last year, key performances last year, including the coaching last year, which 1 year removed from let Adam and let Dan cook. But yeah, I would love to have those rivalries again, man. Would love it. College and the rivalry situation has kind of disintegrated to a certain degree, except for, a few of them because of all the conference reshuffling. In the NFL, you still have the same 8 divisions that you've had since 99. And the NFC East is the marquee out of all of them. And yeah, the 2 games a year versus the Eagles, Giants, and Cowboys are still big, even though we haven't been a regular participant in the meaningful portion or part of those games for a long time. But yeah, maybe I'm trying too hard. I really spoke morally to just the situation, which is regardless of whether or not Sirianni intended to run up the score, if you're a sports fan, a football fan, you know that looked and appeared to be a rub-it-in situation, which I said yesterday is certainly something that I preferred our team to respond to. I think it would have been much worse had they not responded to that. All right, coming up on the show, busy show as mentioned. We've got a bunch of guests on the show. We're going to do at 10:30, Mitch Tischler. We're going to talk about this quarterback situation, Jeff Driscoll being signed, Sam Hartman. A lot of you really worked up about the 3rd-string quarterback situation, or actually the 4th-string quarterback situation. So we'll get into that. We'll get into a lot of other things as well. I've got a What Do You Got when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Hot off the presses, as they used to say back in the, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s.
All the way up to the 90s.
Tress Way, named to the Pro Bowl. Not only named to the Pro Bowl, selected as the starting punter in the NFC. His third Pro Bowl selection. He was selected to the Pro Bowl in 2019 and 2022. He's the first Washington punter since Matt Turk in 1998 to be selected to the Pro Bowl. He now joins Matt Turk as the only punter in franchise history to be selected to 3 or more Pro Bowls. I'm excited for him, man. He's a good punter. He's a clutch punter, too. You know, in some of the big situations where they need something. I mentioned yesterday that he just passed Don Warren on the all-time total games played list for the franchise. Amazing to me. And now he sits 2 games behind Len Haas for 5th on the list. Len Haas was the center, Sonny Jurgensen's, Billy Kilmer's center throughout the 60s and 70s. And then he can easily, by coming back next year and playing for the franchise, he is an unrestricted free agent. It'll be interesting. I hope they re-sign him. He should end up becoming number 3 on the all-time list. If he plays another 2 years, he'll end up becoming number 2 on the list. Darrell Green's number 1. He's played 295 games. He played 295 games. He's 80 ahead of Monty Coleman and 90 ahead of Art Monk. But Tress Way to the Pro Bowl. He's currently 4th among NFL. He was 4th league-wide in net punting this year, 2nd in the NFC behind Ryan Wright in Minnesota. So 2nd best net punting average in the NFC. His inside 20, he had 25 of them. That was 4th overall in the league. It was 2nd in the NFC to Bradley Pinion. Yeah, and let's see what the average, where he was in the average return. Number 1 in the league, average return. Now, that's part punt coverage, okay? Washington's punt coverage, outstanding. Part of that is the punter, Tress Way. Teams have averaged on punt returns 4.1 yards per punt return. Number 1 in the league. So good job, Tress Way. Excited for him in this terrible season. By the way, 2 other players selected as Pro Bowl alternates for the NFC. You ready? Jalen Lane, even though he got hurt last weekend, a 2nd alternate as a return specialist, and Nick Bellore. I mean, we're killing it on special teams, boys. 3rd alternate, Nick Bellore, as a 3rd alternate special teamer. So Tress Way, Jalen Lane, Nick Bellore, but Tress Way voted as the starting punter for the NFC. I don't even know what Pro Bowl weekend does anymore. There's no game. What do they do on Pro Bowl weekend? When is it? Is it in between the Super Bowl and the championship games?
Yeah, it's still that week. I'm not sure where they do it anymore.
Some sort of flag football game or skills competition? What is it?
It's a flag football game and skills competition. They separate it. They do it like NBA All-Star Weekend, kind of, without the actual game of it all. They just play flag football now.
I would say that in this franchise's history, the number 1 Pro Bowl memory is Sean Taylor.
Of course.
Blowing up the Chiefs punter.
Brian Moorman.
Yeah, Moorman. Good God. He was an absolute specimen athletically. Mitch Tischler next.
All right, Merry Festivus to all who celebrate. We start off with Monday Night Football, where Brock Purdy and Phil Rivers were locked in a battle. The 44-year-old Rivers threw for 277 and 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy popped for 5 passing touchdowns of his own and 295 yards. D. Winters closed out the game with a pick 6. The Niners win 48-27. The Commanders, they have just 1 player heading to the Pro Bowl as a starter. Who else but Tress Way? Jalen Lane and Nick Bellore were also selected as special teams alternates, but unlikely to see Jalen Lane as he's been placed on injured reserve, basically ending his season. Sam Cosmi has also been placed on injured reserve as well. Tonight, you got the Caps. They're taking on the New York Rangers over on 106.7 The Fan. Logan Thompson expected to be in net pregame for that one. Gets rolling at 6:45 for a 7 p.m. puck drop. Meanwhile, right here on the Team 980, we got the Wizards getting active against the Charlotte Hornets. Pregame for that one also at 6:45 for a 7 p.m. tip. Again, that's right here on the Team 980. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command and Denton's Office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
This from Danny E. Danny E. writes, Sheehan, perfect example of this incompetent franchise. They have to go out and sign Jeff Driscoll while wasting months on Sam Hartman. By the way, Danny E. emailed that to me, so I just, pulled up all of his emails to me from the last, several years. Last year, Danny E. Not last year, precisely 8 months ago, so it was in April before the draft. Stop pushing Peters to do one thing over another, just let him cook, period. And that's what 4-11 gets you. Welcome to the show, Mitch Tischler. Mitch is doing a great job covering the team, as most of you know. Part of the JP podcast, which airs, a couple times a week, right? Something like that?
Yeah, we got 3 podcasts a week, a TV show, and live streaming after pretty much every game.
There you go. On Monumental Sports, at Mitch_Tischler. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Honestly, I don't even really care about this. I can't believe that anybody would get worked up over Hartman, Driscoll, Josh Johnson, but I guess that's where we've gotten to for at least a small group of people. But just, can you walk us through why Jeff Driscoll rather than just going with Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was a little surprised. We saw Sam Hartman in training camp in the preseason, and I just don't think after the shoulder injury that he really has the arm strength to really play quarterback in the league. And quite frankly, this coaching staff kind of told you, what they thought about him when they kept Josh Johnson on the roster. I mean, this is a guy, obviously everyone knows his story, has been all around the NFL for years and years. And, he doesn't provide you a ton of upside, but he does give you some stability as a third string quarterback. If they really thought Sam Hartman could be the guy, then they probably would have had Sam as your third quarterback. But he's kind of like, who was the team manager in the NCAA tournament? McNeese State. You remember McNeese State had the team manager walked out with a boombox with the team. He was just kind of a vibes guy. And I think that's where Sam Hartman kind of plays into this whole thing is he's good for the quarterback room. He's good for the locker room. Guys like having him around, and that's kind of his role here.
Well, is it also possible that Driscoll didn't want that position, that he was hoping to catch on with somebody else, and decided, hey, I'd like an opportunity to at least work my way into a backup role somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jeff Driscoll's a guy that still seemed to have some football in front of him last year when he came to Washington. And, that's why I was surprised Josh Johnson actually ended up sticking here, because I would have thought for him, he would have wanted something similar as well, an opportunity to really work into a backup. You look at this Washington quarterback room, and at the beginning of the year, it was hard to believe that anybody but Jaden Daniels or Marcus Mariota were going to start any games this year. Obviously, we've gotten into a catastrophic point in the season with the injuries where that's where you're stuck with. But seriously, sitting here at the record that they're at, does it really matter that much?
No.
Your third, fourth, fifth quarterback? What are we working with here?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I know that in the deep, dark bowels of this fan base that hang on every press release, bless their hearts, this is a big deal, and this is, another indication of some level of how they screw everything up. The same people that wanted, us to just shut up and let Adam cook 7-8 months ago, which of course, that's the truth. So when they decided to sit Jaden Daniels, which I'm going to come back to with you here in a moment, my position was, well, I'm not taking any big piece for 2026 and putting that piece out onto the field. Terry, Tunsil, Cosme on offense all find their way to injured reserve or inactive status on game day. And I'd even think about, guys like Kinlaw and Luvu on defense. So Cosme's going to IR. I like that. No reason. And I know he was concussed, but absolutely no reason for him to be out there. I would imagine Tunsil's not going to play again. But what was your position post the decision on Jaden? We'll work our way back to Jaden in a moment on the rest of the players. And how do you think that's going to actually play itself out here over the last, 15, 16 days of the season?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. You brought up a good point, because that was my concern when they shut down Jaden. Granted, they said he wasn't cleared yet, but these guys in the locker room are all watching him practice on the football field. They know that he can get out there and sling the football still. And if you're shutting down Jaden, who else is, sitting there saying, hey, man, I don't want to get hurt to go into the offseason or go into next year, particularly guys like Laramie Tunsil, who are going to go into a contract negotiation and want to get signed. I mean, you think back to the preseason this year, and Rashawn Slater out in L.A., he signed a $100 million deal. 5 days later, tore his ACL. If that ACL happens before he signs that deal, that contract is looking totally different this year. So I think that, there's a trickle-down effect to shutting down Jaden Daniels. And, at what point do you get to a point where guys are like, hey, man, why am I not important enough to be shut down? And then, does that create any kind of strife or any kind of, incongruence in the locker room? So it's going to be interesting to see how this team kind of handles stuff down the stretch here. This short week is going to be tough, particularly we saw that injury list after practice yesterday. It was a laundry list of players. I think there's going to be more players out than they have on the inactive list for game day come Thursday against the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's going to be really, I mean, I've joked that they're basically on their second practice squad of players, but we're not that far removed from it because there are players off the street that are playing for them. So back to the Jaden decision to shut him down. I didn't hear your thoughts on that. What were they?
Well, going back to pre-Minneapolis, going back to the elbow dislocation, I was strong that Jaden should play and needed to get out there and get those reps. But I wasn't positive that was going to happen because we've seen from his coaching staff that even in preseason, they don't value those game reps quite as much as, to me, I think that an NFL team should. And so I was wondering how they were going to handle him. When they brought him back from Minneapolis, I was very happy that he was in that game. And if he was able to play play in a couple games after that and kind of get into a rhythm over the last couple games of the season, I was all in on it. But the second that he re-injured that elbow and, despite them saying there was no, further injury to it, but when they ruled him out in that next game, it was time to call it a day and just let him get to the off season. And particularly when you look at this week against the Cowboys, all the injuries across the O-line now, it even further cements that point that at this point, I don't think there's a good argument to having Jaden play these last two games.
Do you have a sense, or maybe more than a sense, a theory as to how it all came about, who drove the decision, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the doctors, and they can go to a coaching staff or front office and say a player, hey, this guy hurt, let's say Jaden, this guy hurt his elbow. He's about 80%, but he can go out there and play. I can imagine a scenario where front office, coaching staff, whoever it was, said, hey, if he's not 100%, then he's 0%. They make it binary, 1 or 0. And I think that's probably what kind of happened after that Vikings game. I mean, you got real nervous when you saw that, that the hit on the interception there. It's interesting, though, because it's a non-throwing arm. So, what kind of injury could he then incur that would actually impact the offseason and impact, mini camp, OTAs, training camp? But at the same time, you don't want to put him in a situation where he's protecting the left elbow and using his right arm more and takes maybe a big hit on his right shoulder, right elbow, right arm, and does actually create an issue going into the offseason. There's many different ways to look at it. At the end of the day, I think, the fact that he wasn't able to come back from the original dislocation and be 100% kind of tells you that it was time to just kind of call it a day for the season.
Yeah, I'm with you on, there's a big difference between 5-6 games left and 3 games left, especially with the way the schedule broke down, short week into the Philly game, then short week into the Dallas game. So ultimately, I didn't have much of an issue with it, but it sounds to me like you probably would agree with this. If the Giant game had been an absolute need-to-have game, if the Philly game had been an absolute need-to-have game, he would have played.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
I think anyone who thinks that Jaden wanted to not play is incorrect. Jaden's a baller. He's a gamer. He's a guy that wants to be out there all the time. And when we were looking at after the initial dislocation, you had 4 division games, in those final 4 weeks. There's value to getting reps and getting experience against these teams that you're going to play twice a year, hopefully for the next 10 years of Jaden's career. But at the same time, you got to balance, obviously, the re-injury and off-season progress with that experience.
Talking to Mitch Tischler, Beltway Podcast, Monumental Sports. So, I mean, it's kind of like, none of us really know the answer to this, but I want your level of concern. The fact that he left 3 games, that he only played in 3 football games out of 17, fully healthy, start to finish. Do you have a concern moving forward that this is who he's going to be, or do you think it'll ultimately pan out that it's a 1-year aberration?
I think there's a lot of RG3 PTSD. That's a lot of acronyms there with Jaden Daniels and the injury. You got to look back to kind of the entirety of his college career and then, what he was able to do last year. And, he did suffer some injuries along the way, but he's not a guy that's missed a lot of games. I think it's an aberration right now, but it's certainly a data point. I mean, listen, you have the super high of last year and pretty much the super low of this year. Next year is going to be a big year for the Jaden Daniels referendum, especially because you're going to start talking about what that next contract looks like next offseason. So next year is going to be a big time definer of kind of where he is in relation to this franchise. And ultimately, I am believing that this is an aberration. This is kind of a 1 year thing, but at the same time, the best ability is availability, and he's got to remind everybody of who he is and what he's able to do out on the football field.
All right, let's talk about, what's next. And I'm not talking about the Cowboys or the Eagles to finish up the season. What's the number one offseason priority have to get to immediately for the franchise for you?
Edge rusher. You need to get somebody who can get after the quarterback. And, Dorrance Armstrong was having a good season before he got hurt. But if you're able to line up somebody on the opposite side of him that absolutely is a dog and gets after the quarterback like that, I think that's a big issue. You look at this defense, and there's nobody that opposing offensive coordinators have to game plan for really on this defense. There's nobody that stands out as an elite defender really here. And as a group, there's certainly situations where I could see Trey Amos kind of turning into that. You could see guys developing and getting better, but they need somebody who scares opposing offenses. And whether it's safety, whether it's bringing in a safety, bringing in a DN, they need to bring in kind of a big time playmaker that can get out there and really impact the game, by themselves. Everyone wants a Micah Parsons. I'm not saying they're going to get Micah Parsons, but you need somebody who has that kind of game wrecking ability, and they don't have that right now.
Who's going to coach that game wrecker if they find him?
Not Joe Witt, or at least it very much shouldn't be. It shouldn't be Dan Quinn either. I mean, I think Dan Quinn's brought a reasonability to this defense. I think you've seen them play. They're not as confused and as disoriented at the snap of the football, and that's something that we saw with Joe Witt as the D coordinator or the play caller, I guess, if you will, especially early in the season. And that was always an issue. When you see guys sitting there talking to each other when the ball is snapped, that's a problem. They're already a step behind. It's tough to catch up. I think they're going to bring in somebody from the outside. If you're asking me to throw a name out there, there's a million different names that it could be, but I kind of want a little bit more experience of a play caller, somebody who's known for being multiple in their defensive looks, brings more pressure. This Joe Witt, Dan Quinn defense doesn't bring nearly enough pressure to quarterbacks. We saw it early in the season against Michael Penix. We saw it against J.J. McCarthy, and then you saw it against Jackson Dart. I mean, these quarterbacks that are struggling, they just allow them to sit back there and throw the football without getting after them. And that speaks to needing to bring in a dynamic edge rusher, somebody who can dynamically get after the quarterback. So to me, I think you're going to definitely be looking at a new defensive coordinator. And I think you also have to look on the offensive side of the ball. It'll be interesting to see whether Cliff Kingsbury is back, because there's certainly an argument, if his agent is good, about how reasonable he's kind of kept this offense despite all the injuries if he's looking for a job this offseason.
That's an interesting way to go with Cliff. I'll come back to that in a moment. But what names would you throw out in terms of experience? Raheem Morris obviously has a lot of, experience with Quinn. So does Ulbrich. So does, Al Harris, et cetera. But what about a non-Dan Quinn guy? Have you thought about a non-Dan Quinn experienced defensive coordinator play caller?
If you want my top guy, Brian Flores does not have a contract next year as a defensive coordinator in Minneapolis. I doubt they're going to let him go, but I'd throw a fair amount of money at him. I'd make him an assistant head coach. I'd do whatever I could to bring in that guy here, because he has been unbelievable in his career, and the fact that he hasn't gotten a head coaching opportunity is pretty wild. And I think it would be a good step for him if DQ is able to kind of make the assistant head coach move for him. So that's a step closer to being a full-time head coach for him. But I think that's kind of pie in the sky and really your,
right.
The high-end portion of it.
I'm so with you. I'm so impressed every year with Brian Flores as a defensive coordinator. And by the way, it's just a preference too, because he errs on the side of being aggressive more times than not. Look, they've got some personnel too on that defense. Let's not forget that. I don't know, by the way, just Max, and for everybody listening, Jackson Dart against Minnesota's defense on Sunday threw for 33 yards. 33 yards. He had a 4.7 QBR. What?
I believe he had 5 yards at halftime. He had one completion to the Giants for 5 yards and an interception, one completion to the Vikings. That was abysmal.
And the week before that, Prescott faced the highest pressure rate of his career and was off. And we know what the week before that was. How about maybe running Chris Rodriguez on the opening drive another round or two? We don't have to revisit that. Yeah, I think that Minnesota would be insane to let him go. And maybe this is the offseason with all the stuff that's happened with the league and him where he gets that opportunity. I would be interested in Jim Schwartz. Now, Schwartz has outrageous talent, obviously, in Cleveland, including the best football player you could argue pound for pound in the NFL in Myles Garrett. But I do want somebody, Mitch, outside of the Quinn group. I just think that there's enough evidence out there that says that whatever they've been doing here for now 31 games doesn't work, especially against Shanahan-style offenses in particular. I wouldn't mind seeing somebody outside that group rather than seeing Al Harris or Jeff Ulbrich or Raheem Morris end up here.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of different names that are kind of floating around out there who are available, but definitely I'd like to see, we gave Ron Rivera so much crap for the Commanders thing, where he just brought in all the guys that he knew. Yeah. And that's part of the NFL where you're going to bring in kind of guys that names that It would be nice to see somebody outside of the true Dan Quinn tree get an opportunity. And, you wonder if like a Robert Saleh or, if I don't know where things stand up in New York with Aaron Glenn, with how bad this season's been, if they're, starting to look a different direction with him, even though he's, obviously it's his first year there. But there are names out there. There are guys who have kind of a proven defensive track record who could be there. And I agree with you. I'd like to see them go a different direction.
All right, last one, because I know you need to run. You just said something about Cliff that's interesting. You said, can his agent spin it into, look what he was able to do with all of the injuries that he had this year? I think many in our fan base don't realize that Washington offensively, in terms of advanced numbers, are pretty much top half of the league across the board. And they have been successful in doing certain things despite having a shell of what they intended to have before the season started. So what do you think how does that manifest itself with Cliff into a head coaching job?
I don't know if it does, but this is the last year that the Arizona Cardinals are still paying Cliff off from his head coaching job there. So he was able to he was getting the money regardless one way or the other and wanted to come here and prove it. I would love it if Cliff came back. And I know there are a lot of folks out there who get stuck in the microcosm of, throwing 3 passes at the goal line against the Vikings and not running the ball enough. But, I think it was heading into the Eagles game. The Commanders offense had run the ball 401 times and thrown the ball 401 times this season. So they had a pretty balanced, list of run and pass. Now, granted, the goal line play calling could have been better. I think a lot of that comes down to the offensive game plan has Jaden Daniels with a lot of quarterback runs there, or at least options there. And because of the elbow, they weren't doing that. We don't have to get down there. But ultimately, yes, there are a lot of numbers that could suggest that Cliff has been pretty good considering all the injuries. I think he's going to get some looks, particularly when you look around the league and see the way that NFL teams want to hire offensive-minded head coaches. So I think there's certainly going to be some interest. He's certainly going to get interviews and going to be in the discussion with a couple of different jobs. Ultimately, I'd say it's 50-50 whether he's back next season. But if he really wants to bolster that resume, if he comes back next year and is able to have a healthy Jaden Daniels and put up a season similar to last year, he'd have his pick of the litter when it came to head coaching jobs two off seasons from now.
5th in the league in pass to run, 5th lowest, in the league in pass to run percentage, or looking at it from the flip, 5th highest in run to pass ratio in the league. I think most fans who have watched this team would not think that to be true. Thank you, as always. Appreciate it. Hope you're well. Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Same to you. Thanks for having me.
Mitch Tischler, everybody. Heading into, I think, coordinator day today. I think Cliff Kingsbury speaks here shortly, right? I think so. So we'll try to have anything that he says of note during the show. Couple things to get to, including we'll do our NFL power rankings and NFL buy and sell coming up in the next hour. And yes, I did get that branding study that I don't know, maybe 3 dozen of you sent me on Twitter. I saw it right before the show. I'll get to that at some point today as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. This may be the opposite of what I bought last week. You'll have to remind me, although I'm not expecting you to remember. But I think I was kind of high on Buffalo last week.
Yeah.
I'm buying anybody but Buffalo to emerge from the AFC into the Super Bowl. And that's not like out on a limb. They're not going to, more likely than not, have a home game.
Yeah.
They're not going to win the division more likely than not. So they're going to have to start that process on the road as a wild card team. I just think that right now they're just not complete enough. They're really not a good defensive team.
I mean,
how can you go from this 21-0 down comeback on the road in Foxborough to beat the Patriots to, it's the NFL. I understand it's the NFL. And every week the craziest things happen. That's why I was on the Raiders this week. They looked like the worst team in the history of the league a week ago, and then they nearly beat the hottest team in the league on Sunday. And Cleveland is a good defensive team, but they can't stop anybody, Buffalo. They cannot stop anybody.
And so that's the thing, man. Like, it's all on Josh Allen's shoulders. And
I trust him.
Exactly. And if there's one guy I feel like can win and carry his team through 4 games, it's Josh right now. He's the last guy standing. So I don't 100% agree. I think that the Bills have a more chance than I think they're getting credit for right now. But you know where my heart lies. My heart lies with Houston. So I could see both, but I feel like they deserve a little bit more respect.
Let me ask you this. Who's the best quarterback in the AFC right now?
Josh Allen.
I agree with that. And he's going to be by far and away, other than Aaron Rodgers, the most experienced quarterback in the postseason. Assuming the Steelers get there without DK Metcalf suspended for 2 games. All they have to do is beat the Browns on Sunday and they clinch, or if the Packers beat the Ravens, they clinch. Yes, I'm rooting for that. I bet the Steelers to win the AFC North before the season started. Here's the thing. Josh Allen is the best, but Drake May's playing at such a high level. Aaron Rodgers is playing at such a high level. Trevor Lawrence is playing at a high level.
He's turned it on.
Justin Herbert's playing at a ridiculously high level right now.
With a broken hand, by the way.
With a broken hand. And they've got better teams. The Chargers have a better overall team. So does Jacksonville. So does New England.
I feel like New England and Buffalo, it's the same picture, kind of, except Drake is a little less experienced. The New England's
receiving. Buffalo doesn't have Stephon Diggs.
That's true. They
have James Cook.
And that might be all they need, man. That ground game is ridiculous. That one he broke off for 40, very good.
Yeah. That's my first buy. Everybody in the AFC, anybody in the AFC not named Buffalo to make it to Santa Clara in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Although, let me just say this.
What's up?
I'm going to root for Josh Allen. I really would love to see him get there. Mm-hmm. And that's a fan base, honestly, that is, one of the most enthusiastic, most rabid in sports, and yet not annoying. There are others that are incredibly annoying when they're that passionate.
They're not annoying to us. I assume that NF or AFC East fans would have a little bit
that's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
Right. But Cowboys fans, annoying. So many college fan bases, Ohio State's fan base, insufferable.
Very much so.
In the NFL, yeah, I guess, I don't know, I don't even know where you'd rank the fan bases right now. Buffalo's is near the top, though.
That'll be a playoff conversation. All right.
Look, they're going to have to win on the road. That's the bottom line. They're going to have to win on the road more likely than not to get to the Super Bowl. All right, what's your first buy? So
my first buy is a little bit of a projection past the playoffs into next season, because a lot of teams...
You've been doing that a lot recently.
I have. So a lot of... Big Shoe went down. What are the Chiefs going to do, Kevin? Here's what I think that they're going to do to start next season.
They're moving to Kansas for one.
They are doing
Dome
that.
Stadium in 2031.
Which is going to be interesting. The Kansas Chiefs has an interesting ring to it. I don't know how I feel about it.
Well, there is a Kansas City, Kansas, as well as a Kansas City, Missouri.
Well.
Yeah, there's both. So they'll stay Kansas City.
My point here is Marcus Mariota will be the day one starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is solely a claim made based off of play style. And I think that the Chiefs would be an organization willing to give him 8 or 10 to 12 million to be like, hey, just get us through the first couple months and then you can chill for a bit, man. Just get us through, get us back to Patrick Mahomes and everything will be fine. So I'm buying, Marcus Mariota as a Kansas City Chief next year.
Wow.
It's an interesting ticket.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah. I think that the system is a match. I think the ability, assuming Andy Reid's back,
of course,
and their staff is back
naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Marcus Mariota is looking for a comfortable situation where he can start or compete to start, but it's got to be, I think with this guy, and I don't know him, it's just, it's outside observing about the Philadelphia experience and what he has said about the Washington experience, which he loves. I mean, it was in many ways career and in some ways life-saving for him to land here with the people that he is with. He absolutely loves it here. But yeah, the Kansas City situation, I could see that.
What are you selling?
I'm selling something that I think is pretty easy to sell. I'm selling the Dallas Cowboys from ever making it even near a Super Bowl as long as Jerry Jones owns the team. This is a franchise that's delusional about itself. It has been forever, a delusional fan base as well. And the other part of the sell is I like Dak Prescott. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I've never thought of Dak in that way as being an elite quarterback. And I know some of the numbers suggest that he's been elite at times, including at times this year. I like Dak. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he is a carry, strap the team to your back quarterback. I think if that was the case, instead of their record being, what is it right now, 6-9 or 6-8-1, it would be 8-6-1. So the Dallas Cowboys, they're not anywhere near where we were for all of those years, but they have the longest streak of not being in a championship game, AFC or NFC title game. Got to go back to that 95 season for the last time they were in one. And I don't think they'll ever sniff one again as long as Jerry's the owner. It's the same situation for different reasons because Jerry's actually a respected owner. Jerry's actually fairly smart. Dan was considered to be kind of a dummy and a terrible, owner by the rest of the owners. Dan was not popular. Jerry actually is popular with a lot of the owners. But I think that as long as he owns the team, the involvement will be too high and the results will continue to be what they are. Dallas is just never getting over the hump with him owning the football team.
Yeah, it's just for Jerry, I feel like there are just a few things that fall through the cracks. He did make some good moves this season. Give him credit. Quentin Williams has been a great addition for him.
It was expensive.
It was very expensive.
Yeah.
And Pickens has been a revelation in that offense. They're gonna bring him back.
They should, but it's
just how much
there's a little risk in that.
Oh,
we saw what happened in that Detroit game. He basically checked out before the game started.
Yeah, he did. It wasn't great. All right. So I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do with my sell here. I feel I'm reading the room. Oh, there are a lot of people hopping on the Texans bandwagon right now, Kevin. I'm not going to.
We did 2 months ago.
Exactly. We were ahead of the curve. We made this popular.
Jump off now?
No. I'm not jumping off. It's just something I'm noticing, and I would like to mention. My sell is going to be NFC North. I don't think any of those teams are going to compete for a championship. I think Ben Johnson's going to get too cute. I think the Packers are too injured, and God knows if the Lions are even going to make the playoffs. So I'm out on the NFC North making waves. NFC West, however, looks very, very competitive. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what if the NFC playoffs go through Soldier Field? Did you see that environment the other night? That was as insane as Soldier Field has been in years.
Man.
They're good fans, man. They're kind of like
they're great fans.
They're an established, longtime fan base. Our fan base obviously has eroded significantly.
Quite a bit.
Over the years. But man, that crowd almost lifted them to that victory. It was insane. The entire night. And when they got that onside kick from that moment on, it was crazy.
Yeah.
You
can't get cute out of a coach. That's my big point. And I think when the playoffs come around and it's hard-nosed, cold as hell football, I know the Bears can run it with the best of them. But man, if that's all that they're gonna, I don't know, man. I can't see it. The Bears have been the Bears for my entire life. Until they break that mold, I'm just gonna keep putting that tag on them.
Did you just make that up? You can't get cute out of a coach? Or did you hear it somewhere else?
I can't remember. I think I've heard it somewhere.
Because that's really good.
But like,
if you came up with that, that's
there's no
really
way I came,
good.
There's no way I came up with it. But
you can't get cute out of a coach. I love that. And you watch Ben Johnson and you kind of feel what you're talking about.
Because he's gonna have Caleb like fake a pitch and then act like he's tripping, and then Caleb's gonna like fumble the football, and boom, it's gonna be 21-14, and they're gonna lose the game.
Yeah. I do like Ben Johnson though. I mean, he's certainly
good coach.
You know, he is doing a job with that team and that offense in particular. Look, here's the deal. Like, it doesn't always happen this way, but more times than not, it happens this way. When you can run the football and you can stop the run, you got a chance in the postseason if you get there. Chicago can really run the football. Like, where are they ranked right now in terms of rush offenses in the league? I mean, they've got two backs. They've got an offensive line that's just pounding people. I mean, they ran. They're number
2 in yards per game right now.
2 in yards per game behind Buffalo. By the way, 2 spots ahead of Washington. And average yards per carry, 4.9 yards per carry. That's third behind Baltimore and Buffalo. I mean, they got 2 backs, man. And I'm telling you right now, I think they really like Monangai more than Swift.
They do. He's an Isaiah Pacheco-esque runner in that he's like angry.
And he runs angry. But he's got even better vision than Pacheco.
And
much better vision than Pacheco.
Makes a world of difference.
Look, if they can turn people over, if they can run the football, they're going to have a chance, especially if they only have to play 2 games at home. This game's Sunday night in San Francisco. Wow, what a game. I mean, massive football game, because Green Bay still has a chance to win the division. You know, they have a much better division record than Chicago. It doesn't matter because they're not going to end up in a tiebreaker because of Green Bay's tie. But if Green Bay wins the final 2 against the Ravens and the Vikings to finish 11-5-1, and the Bears lose 2 and they face San Francisco and Detroit, it's Green Bay who wins the division, and then Chicago's going on the road, and then you really can't get cute out of a coach on the road. Really hard to get cute out of a coach in a road playoff game. I'm going to buy one more thing just because they're down right now. I'm going to buy Tampa Bay to win the NFC South.
Oh.
They play the Dolphins this week at 1:00. They have lost 6 of 7 games. By the way, their last 3 losses by 4, by 1, and by 3 to the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers, the 3 teams in their division. By the way, I told you last week about the Saints and their defense. I mean, it is nasty. I know they faced the Jets, understood. Chase Young had, I think, another sack. Cam Jordan, I think, had 2. Did Chase Young? Yeah, had another sack in the game. They're really, it's a good thing for the league that the Saints aren't playing in their final 2 games any contenders, because that would be a tough out. They play the Titans and the Falcons to finish up. But I'm going to buy Tampa to win the NFC South. I think that they're going to figure out a way to get it together, and it starts Sunday at Miami. They've got to win that game. If they win that game, it doesn't matter what Carolina does against Seattle. It comes down to the final game of the year. It comes down to the final game of the year, and Tampa Bay can win the division at home. And that would be with a 9-8 record to win the division at home. So I like them to win the division in the NFC South, despite the fact that they have lost a lot of games here recently. I still think they've got the better staff and the better quarterback, although Bryce Young's playing at a high level. Man, you can't discount people at that position. God, stop. Why do I do it sometimes too? I did it a little bit with Caleb Williams over the summer. I mean, Malik Willis looked like a completely different quarterback. Bryce Young looks really capable. He's short. He's super short. But, man, he is a playmaker. Has a bit of the clutch gene, too, with that franchise.
It's funny. It's funny about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because didn't they do this exact same thing last year where they faltered down the stretch and it was them and the Falcons basically locked in a battle to see who's going to make the playoffs. And then they won their last 2 games. We beat the Falcons on Sunday Night Football, and then the Falcons, I think, dropped their last game of the season or whatever. And Tampa won the NFC South and got in. They do this every year.
Tampa went on a massive roll. They were at one point 2 games behind the Falcons, and they had been swept by Atlanta.
Yes,
last year.
You remember that?
And then they got on a roll. I'm pulling it up right now to see exactly, because they may have won out. They won 6 of their final 7 games. 6 of their final 7, won the division. And, they went into our playoff game as a short favorite, but I think we all felt like there was a chance going into that game for sure. It's a hell of a playoff game, actually. I mean, both the Detroit game's the most memorable, but really the best of the football games that Washington played in the postseason last year was the first one. That was a really good football game. I mean, big-time performances, obviously, by Jaden Daniels, but Baker Mayfield as well was outstanding. And really, it was that fumble that was a massive play when Mayfield sort of got bumped in the backfield and lost control of the ball. But you had your stars play big. Mike Evans played big. I'm pulling it up right now. Mayfield was 15 of 18 in that game. Jaden obviously was the star of the game by far, but Terry was outstanding in that game. Diami, Eckler came up big in that game. Yeah, what a playoff game that was. Maybe we'll revisit that on the anniversary of the first playoff win in 19 years last year and do a breakdown of the Tampa-Washington game. I'm kidding. We won't do that. All right. I'm going to address this thing that you guys sent me about the branding study. I'll do that next. Naki will join us on the show at 11:35. Mike Jones will join us at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So, a lot of you sent this to me, and I want to give. It looks like it came from Skins Draft, so a lot of you just linked me to this Skins Draft tweet. He retweeted, I guess, a column, an article from a company called Brand Finance. Brand Finance is, according to their Twitter handle, the world's leading brand valuation consultancy, founded by David Highbrand in '96, bridging the gap between marketing and finance. So recently they did a study, 2026 NFL brand equity. And the brand equity is basically a composite ranking of teams 1 through 32 based on name, logo, and uniform heritage and tradition, global fan distribution, fan interest and engagement, positive versus negative brand sentiment, consensus prestige and recognition, ticket sale and attendance trends, and television ratings. And in this particular brand equity ranking, Washington was 32nd among 32 teams. By the way, if you're wondering who's at the top, Pittsburgh is 1, San Francisco 2, Green Bay 3, Dallas 4, Kansas City 5, Philly 6, the Patriots 7, the Giants 8, the Raiders 9. You know, the Raiders do have kind of a global fan base. And the Dolphins are 10. Washington is the bottom. Jacksonville's right next to them, and Houston right next to them. So, look, I mean, I'm going to try to reach out to somebody. I just saw this right before the show because many of you sent this to me about where Washington ranks. I mean, we know the reason for this, all right? I've talked about it forever. I know many of you like to push back, but in this study, by the way, they write, where is it? When it comes to underachieving relative to market potential, only and in Washington can give the Jets a run for its money, but at least a quick solution is available to Josh Harris and his ownership group, unlike Woody Johnson's. No brand on this list has a higher ranking to ceiling differential than the Washington Commanders, but substantial improvement to equity appears impossible with the current name and logo. Okay, I'm reading this for the first time, just so you know, because I just clicked on another tweet. This is general observations from a site called Ranking Football that looked at this brand equity study. Yeah, the absence of relative growth coming off. Okay, no brand on this list has a higher ranking to ceiling differential than the Washington Commanders, but substantial improvement to equity appears impossible with the current name and logo. The absence of relative growth coming off a conference championship appearance is confirmation. I've talked about this a lot, that the growth, the bounce from last year, and look, we can talk about how this year's gone and the impact that this year has gone and what would have happened had this year been a great follow-up to last year. What if they were 11-4 instead of 4-11? But anybody that last year thought it was over, that the conversation about name and brand was over because of the season they had, wasn't paying attention to some of the underlying, things like how many times did you get pitched on season tickets? I mean, I got one email after another. And so as they write, the absence of relative growth coming off a conference championship appearance is confirmation. Their 2025 Super Bowl era alternate uniform said to become permanent in 2026. I think there's a chance, as I've discussed since last fall, that there's a chance it'll become permanent, is a faux back meant to mimic the Redskins era. It contains a critical omission, however. It foregoes legacy Redskins logos for the most hated one in the league, and thus did not make a dent in brand perception. It was barely even celebrated by the shell of the franchise's former fan base and did not inspire reversal of the scorned majority's mass exodus. Of every team on this list, Washington has the easiest path to ascension. With almost any replacement to the current name and logo, they could go 0-17 for the next 5 years and still never have brand equity as low as it is right now. There's more about Harris. Managing partner Josh Harris would do well to act fast, etc. Look, I don't know anything about Ranking Football and their write-up of this. I believe that the brand equity study. I don't know if they're 32nd, but they're certainly in the bottom quarter. There's no doubt. Like I've discussed, I don't know, ad nauseum for many of you for several years now. What happened, especially over the last 6-7 years of the Snyder era, is that 2/3 of the fan base, people that would call themselves, hardcore fans, said bye. See ya. I found something else better to do. I'm not going to be taken advantage by him any longer. And once the name was lost, then those 2/3, you're going to have to fight to get them back, which is why I've always suggested that I don't know what's in their business plan as it relates to customer acquisition. Because if it's people that were never tied to the old brand, then and there may be good reason for them to go after a whole new market of fans. And I would guess that would be primarily a younger fan. Why? Because while they may not have the spending ability today that those 2/3 that said bye have, they have a longer and a much, deeper lifetime revenue generation ability because they're going to live a lot longer. So I think I'm not, the conversations that I have, like with, about the throwback uniforms, I knew that was going to be a part of this year and maybe a big part of moving forward. I think that that's a step in the right direction. I think that's helpful, as I have said. But yes, Washington Commanders doesn't work for too many people. And the idea that winning and getting near a Super Bowl would just erase that fact just was never, people that thought that never had an understanding of branding, never understood the significance of, emotional detachment. And that's what happened with not only the losing and the way they lost, but then the loss of something that was so cherished, the name and the associated brand. Branding people will tell you, I've said this for 15, 20 years now, being on these airwaves. Branding, the idea of emotional detachment is frightening to consumer branding people. And that's why you don't see major changes to successful existing brands, because there's too much risk associated with it. What do I think will happen? I think that they are definitely, reeling a little bit. I think they're definitely upset that it wasn't the bounce they were looking for off of last year. I still will maintain, even though my number one would be to bring Redskins back, to bring the logo back. I think it's absolutely justifiable to bring it all back. But I'm not the one that would be involved in making this decision, even though I am a customer, and many of you are as well. The biggest customers of the NFL are Anheuser-Busch and Amazon and Fox and Paramount, et cetera, et cetera. They're not going to buy into Redskins coming back. And that's the problem. Once it left the barn, it was impossible to shove back in, because the league and the league's biggest revenue partners dealt with that question for years. And now that they haven't had to deal with it, they're not going back to it. So I don't think Josh Harris has a choice to go back to Redskins, even though that's my number one. Redskins, logo, bring everything back. It would be the one way to fix the brand equity issue they have. Many people would, bitch and scream, and the league's partners would bitch and scream about it, but it's the one way this one market and this one team would generate a ton of brand affinity again. But I don't think it'll happen. Do I think that Commanders is a given to stay? No, I've always said that, even though at the end of last year they talked about, this is really stuck inside the building. The problem is inside the building weren't their customers. And, they were going to have to continue to win, and attract this new customer base. The people that didn't lose the feeling that people like me had. Whether you think that's absurd or not, it doesn't matter. It's what it is. It's emotions. It's not always logic. Okay? So it's emotionally how many of us feel, not attached like we once were. So how do you get that back? But then do you, And then you get into the challenge of, okay, this is a terrible thing that Jason Wright and those people did to the organization back in February of 2022. But what's the solution if Redskins isn't it? If the league won't let us do that? It's not an easy answer. I've always felt for them on this topic because what do? My feeling is Washington football team, we call them the Skins, and we bring back the old logo and we slap it on the helmet and everything else because the logo's never been offensive to anybody. And we got the old uniforms back and we go with that. I think that would be the least polarizing of all of the answers, but there's no doubt that another new name would not be, something that would result in 100%, approval. It's really hard for them to come up with that. But, I will reach out to somebody from this group to see if we can get them on the show, maybe over the holidays or shortly thereafter. Brand Finance. It doesn't, I think most people who are even objective about this would say, okay, I'm surprised that they're 32nd, but I'm not surprised that they're near the bottom. It's the people that aren't from here that have never felt it like we have felt it, that don't understand it. Bless their hearts, they can speak to it all they want. But if you've never felt it, you can't really speak to it. We're going to talk to Chris Naki next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So on Saturday evening, amidst the NFL and the college football playoff, Maryland was playing Virginia in a throwback ACC game down in Charlottesville. Those that haven't been paying attention to college basketball, Virginia's good. They're ranked in the top 25. And I did have the game on one of the laptops that I had brought into the room because I wanted to see my Terps play. Wasn't paying attention to it enough. But the guy on the call on Saturday, right here on the Team 980, was Chris Nockey with Johnny Holiday. It looked like, honestly, one of the ugliest games, excuse me, that I've ever seen in terms of the turnovers and just, two teams that looked like they had never played basketball before in the first half.
Yeah, it was odd, Kevin. First of all, it's good to talk to you again.
You as well.
Strange game. First half was the classic rock fight, as you said. It was awful. It was terrible. I think it was a 5-point game at the break, and I think Maryland had 5 field goals at that point in time. But
right.
The second half was 56-53 Virginia. So it's weird. Shots started falling right at the onset of the second half, and it just kept on going 3 after 3. That's the way Virginia plays. I don't know if that's the way you want to play against them. But, I thought Maryland, given the fact their best player is still out, Pharrell Payne, I thought they played pretty well in a, kind of a difficult situation. And sort of a continuing thread from where they played against Michigan, where they actually played their best game of the season, but they lost to the best team in the country, I think. Is it progress? Is it ever progress when you lose? I guess those are questions for another day, but I do think they're trending a little bit better, a little bit in the right direction right now, more so than they were even 3 weeks ago.
First of all, Chris Nockey joins us on the show. Chris Nockey's daughter, Kelsey, who is an absolute professional success everywhere she goes, and was, started at Maryland. She's been in various places, is now the head of basketball operations for UVA?
Yeah. So I guess it was one of those can't lose nights, right? But it did feel, a couple of articles written about the Nockey Bowl going on on Saturday, and I certainly wasn't. I'm not gonna personalize that, but she's done a great job. It's a nice program. She's working for great guys, and good for her. She's done well for herself.
She's great. So real quickly on the Buzz Williams Terp strategy of Bill Belichickian, injury information. Is Pharrell Payne badly hurt? Is he done for the year? Is he done for a few games? It seems like there's no injury information released by this iteration of Maryland basketball.
That's a Buzz thing. It surprises me a little bit, but Buzz is a different breed of cat, as they say. And so I will give you good news that I think it's good news. All I can tell you is that I saw Pharrell walking around the hotel in Charlottesville. His leg was unencased, if I can use that. There was no brace.
Sure.
There was no, so I guess that's good news. I've heard a lot of Maryland folks clamor for, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to shut him down and bring him back next year when you get this really good freshman class coming in. But I don't think that's on anybody's mind in the basketball office at all. I think they want their best player back with the Big Ten season starting up here January 3rd against Oregon.
What do we think of our team here? I think it's going to struggle. They obviously need Pharrell Payne. But then I look at how hard they tried in that game at UVA. And then the total aberration to me is the Michigan game. I mean, Michigan's been annihilating people by 40. They may be the best team college basketball seen since the UNLV teams of the early 90s. And Maryland had a 9-point lead in the second half with no Pharrell Payne after he got hurt in the first half with Diggy Coit going nuts. I don't know what to make of it. You're there every day. For Terp fans, is this going to be one of those, it took them November and December to figure it out, but they become a competitive team that wins games in January, February, and March, or not?
Yeah, I think that's the case, and I certainly hope it is. Let me back up just a second. I will tell you, we have been in the Big Ten now for 11 years.
Yeah.
And this is our 11th season. Michigan this year is the best Big Ten team I've seen, and it's not even close. They're the Big Ten's best shot for a national champion in years. A prohibitive favorite, I think. But the Terps, I do.
Well, how
think,
did that happen
know,
though? Last Saturday night, a week ago Saturday night. I mean, I was actually out of town, but I was watching it, and I'm like, how is this happening? That they beat Gonzaga by 40, they beat Auburn by 30, they beat Nova by 30, and we're up. I think we're the only team to have a second half lead against them this year.
Well, some of that, Kevin, is the sort of the falsehood of comparative scores. If Gonzaga beats Maryland by 39, the next night Michigan beats Gonzaga by 40. So that's a 79-point delta there. So you think Maryland has absolutely no chance. But those games were played in a really sterile environment in Las Vegas. You get a game at Xfinity. I think the crowd was all sorts of fired up, not just the quality of the opponent, national TV. It's just a different animal. And there's a lot of pride that these guys are playing with. I think one of the things that they've struggled with is the, availability of some of these guys. And I'm not making excuses, but like if you don't have Pharrell Payne against Virginia's size,
right,
you're going to get what you got. You got a 38-8 delta in the points in the paint, 38-8. And yet, that game was a 3-point game with a handful of minutes to play. So they're doing a lot of things right. You mentioned the grit that they play with. And I think that one common thread between the Michigan and UVA game is we've sort of seen the trademark, grit and relentlessness that Buzz's teams generally are known for. That's sort of his calling card. Dusty May, after the game Michigan's coach after the game said that, he one of the things he said about Maryland's rebounding, he said it was like Braveheart, how hard they went after. He said it was futile, as in, feudal era, not futile. Yeah. But I think that's one of the things we've seen, and hopefully that's one of the things that's being developed. And when you do get a run of home games here, and you open up the Big Ten in January, with a couple of home games, you got to take advantage of those. And that's certainly a good way to turn your season right side up after going 0-2 to start. But to be fair, too, those are two really difficult games to start the Big Ten season off, at Iowa and at home against the team that's number one, at least metrically speaking, by far. Michigan has the best analytics, best metrics in the NCAA.
Sunday in College Park, they play Old Dominion at home before they get into the Big Ten schedule, which includes back-to-back games against Oregon and Indiana. There are tickets this year for Maryland games, people. So if you want a really good environment for a sporting event, you can get into Xfinity this year and see Oregon, Indiana in early January. They've got later season games against Purdue, who's been ranked number one in the season. Illinois later in the season. They've already played Michigan, and as Naki said, they're the best team that he has seen since Maryland's been in the Big Ten. So I think for me, the effort, the whole thing, muddying up games, we've seen that with Buzz's teams at Texas A&M, at Virginia Tech, at Marquette. So there's going to be an element to that. Who can you count on other than Pharrell Payne, in the paint, to score points for them every night?
Therein lies the rub. And I would have thought that the guards would be playing better than they actually have. We've seen flashes. You mentioned Diggy, Coit, and he's had a couple of monster games, and he just continues to hit shot after shot. But, with that comes the obvious defensive liability of having a 5'8" guard. Virginia clearly went after him on Virginia's offensive end all night long. And, they had their point guard had a career, or not a career high, season high in that game, the BYU transfer. So So you're always going to be a little limited from that perspective. But I think it's incumbent on the other guys to not only step up, but to play to a certain standard. They've got guys who I think can play. Watts, certainly Miles Rice played at Indiana last year as a captain of that team. And he's had some good stretches and some good games. But they just have not been able to sustain much in that backcourt at all. And, it's a conference full of good players. Every team's got guys like that. And so it's really incumbent upon them to be better, I think. The quality play has to be better.
Talking to Chris Naki. So I didn't give you a heads up on this, but I want to ask you about it because you and I have talked about it on the show before, I think on the podcast a while back. By the way, Merry Christmas to you here on the 23rd, to you and the family. I want you, if you don't mind, just to tell everybody about your dad.
Oh, jeez.
It's such a fascinating story. And you'll do it much more justice than me. Give us 5 minutes on Chris Naki's father.
Well, first of all, I'll never claim objectivity. I'm the son of one of the great overachievers that I've ever known in my life. Fortunate enough to have him for as long as I did. But he's a guy who was, a very gifted athlete. He played basketball and baseball in college. He was the leading scorer in the old Big 8 conference at the University of Colorado. He was, back before there was a whole lot of record keeping, he was the number 1 pick of the NBA draft, drafted by a team that folded a couple months later, the Pittsburgh Ironmen.
Yeah.
And so his rights were sold to the Knicks. He and my grandfather, his father, went in there and tried to negotiate a contract for a whopping, I think it was $2,500 or something like that. And the Knicks said, no, too much money. And so he decided he'd had an opportunity. So when he was in college, he was in Naval Intelligence School, and he spoke Russian and a couple different dialects of Chinese fluently, which is another ridiculous bark. Who does that? And so he was in the Naval Intelligence School. At the time, there was sort of, here in D.C., there were grumblings of starting up a new agency. It was the old OSS that became the CIA. So he got in on ended up, he decided he was going to go to Georgetown Law School. He came to D.C. to do that. And then he joined the CIA instead of, he decided he wanted to, he'd had enough of school with all the intelligence classes that he'd taken. So he was obviously attracted to the CIA because he spoke multiple languages. He got on the ground floor. He was a lifer there, worked for 27 or 28 years, and it ended up culminating in him being George Bush's deputy director at the CIA. He was an appointee of Gerald Ford's. So he ran the agency on a day-to-day basis for Bush while Bush was, doing the George Bush things. And so he ran the agency. Bush ended up resigning when Jimmy Carter got elected. My dad was the director of the CIA for a time. And then there were a couple different stories that led to, he ended up out of the CIA and he worked for Boeing for a time in Seattle. But yeah, he's been, he was in the Kennedy White House during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right. I remember you telling me that your father was one of the people initially that briefed Kennedy about the Cuban missiles.
He and one of his compatriots, they were working, I forget what the acronym was, but it was the service within the agency that would analyze all the pictures taken by the U-2 spy planes. So they saw the pics of the missiles in Cuba, and it was pretty clear. And my dad was always quick to give credit to the other guy he was working with, who had had a lot more experience in the field. But they went to, brief Kennedy. They were in the White House all during those days. He described the bedlam of the whole thing, and there was a general there, one of the guys in the Joint Chiefs, that wanted to just bomb the crap out of Cuba. Just was adamant about, we have to destroy this country. And Kennedy was a much cooler head, obviously, and you saw how that prevailed. But or how that side prevailed. But in the ensuing years after that, one of his jobs, he would go brief ex-presidents. So, for instance, when, in the mid-'60s, when those guys were still alive, he would go to Independence, Kansas, and brief Harry
Truman? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and he would go and brief Eisenhower on, covert, because that's part of the protocol. Ex-presidents always get briefed on what's going on in things like that. So he got a chance to spend time with those guys, and his stories of dealing with these guys and of dealing with some of the guys that he absolutely loved and some that he loathed. He was not a big Henry Kissinger guy at all, but it's just kind of interesting. Sort of a Forrest Gumpian, came in contact with absolutely everybody who was of import during his time, and so yeah, there's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, it's hard to live. The bar is set pretty high in the Nocky family,
Henry Nocky, Chris's dad. I want to ask you, though, because, we live in an area, and as a Washingtonian and a native Washingtonian, those that are, you grow up and people whose, fathers, parents are CIA, but it's really not spoken of. So two things. One, when did you realize that your father was in the CIA? And two, specific to the Cuban Missile Crisis, you were old enough to remember the fear of the time. Is there anything about the way your father came home and talked about the dire, situation that it was that you remember?
No, I was a little, I was probably 6 at the time.
Okay.
I was a little bit too young. And, but my older brothers talk about that. They also talk about, I was too young the day Kennedy got assassinated, that, he went and picked them up from school, immediately, just to kind of bring them home and walk through what was going on the television, what was playing out on TV at the time. I don't really remember much about
you
that.
You had 4 brothers, correct?
Yes. The older brothers. Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And later on, it's funny. I had a guy call me out of the blue. This was probably in the mid 90s. Called me on I can tell you, it was on a landline. That's how long ago it was. But he called me and he said, you don't know me, but I'm one of the foremost authors of, on the Kennedy assassination. And I have it on good authority. Your dad was on the ground in Dallas that day. And I said, I just kind of chuckled. Everybody's got an opinion, right? And I just said, well, somehow he magically picked my older brothers up from school that afternoon. So, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But, all that stuff. And so I remember telling my dad, I don't know, Kevin and I, one of the greatest movies I've ever seen, just from an entertainment perspective, was JFK, the movie by Oliver Stone.
Yeah.
And so I remember early 90s, I was talking to my dad, and he was kind of saying, well, what'd you do last night? And I said, well, I went out to this movie. And he said, what'd you see? And I said, JFK. And he just exploded.
Oh, boy.
He was like, that movie is such bull, fill in the blank. And he said, I knew all those guys. The guy who played Kevin Costner played Jim, it escapes me now, but
Garrison.
Garrison. He said, complete crackpot, complete and total crackpot. And he said some of they said it may have been compelling movie making, but there were absolutely no truths taken, for that. And so, that was kind of interesting to me, a very visceral reaction from a guy who didn't offer much in the way of visceral reactions.
But did you know, as a kid, did your brothers know what your father did for a living, or was he just working for the naval, department?
Yeah, he was working for the government. Every time he filled out any emergency care information, just said government executive. Yeah. Now, when he became a presidential appointee, obviously, when I was a teenager, I knew what he did.
Sure.
And then he became a presidential appointee. So we used to kind of chuckle about it. And then, that comes with a presidential appointee that comes with a scramble phone and bars on your windows and doors, at home and stuff like that. A lot of extra security and guys in plain clothes and unmarked cars picking them up and dropping them off every day. So, and
it's not because he was drafted number 1 overall by the Pittsburgh Ironmen. That's not the reason. Where he and your
No.
grandfather negotiated a deal worth, what'd you say, $2,500?
$2,500. How
Oh, my
quaint is
God.
that? Thinking about that. So, yeah. So
Hell of a life.
yeah,
I mean, we've talked about it before, but some of the things, like you said, it's very Forrest Gumpian. He was just around at certain times with the world's biggest figures during the world's biggest crises. And in fact, tell me if this is true too, because I think I remember you telling me this. Didn't your father go to China with Nixon or not?
He did. He went like Kevin. He went everywhere, and he went under. He had a bunch of different passports and a bunch of different, fake names that he would travel under. But yeah, he was in China. He spent a lot of time in the Far East. He was in Vietnam a bunch. Back when the war was going on, he would say, I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. Well, where are you going? Well, I'm going to London. And then you'd get a call. Obviously, there weren't any, if phone calling anybody was problematic in 1970 or 68 or whatever. So get a call 10 or 12 days later, say, where are you? And, he'd say, well, I'm in Cyprus, or something like that. So he just basically, and looking back too, I never really thought about how unsettling it must have been for my mom. Not only the fact that she had to parent 5 kids, but she had no idea where he was. And he wasn't. I know that he was never disclosing any. He didn't give up anything to the day he died. He was, he was pretty true to the creed and to the, to the pledge that those guys have to take.
Well, he wasn't in the garden playing the Knicks. That's for sure. What a life. I mean, Chris Nocke's father's life is truly amazing. I mean, you can Google it and read a lot about Henry Nocke. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me spill it. I hadn't talked about it in a long time, and still it makes me proud. It also makes me sad. I wish you were still around. But, for anybody who's got a dad out there and you got Christmas looking at you, make sure you appreciate the opportunity that you have this Christmas. It's a special thing.
Yeah, great advice. Talk soon. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Chris Nocke, everybody. Up next, we'll go NFL with Mike Jones from The Athletic. Mike Jones joins us right now on the show. Of course, Mike covered our team forever for the Washington Post. He covers the NFL now as a national writer for The Athletic at by Mike Jones on X, on Twitter. I don't even know where to start other than to say this is one of the wildest NFL seasons I can remember in a while, with just really no definition on who the best teams are. And even some of the teams that we believe might be the best right now, they still have to fight to get into the postseason. See Houston as an example. You've covered this league forever. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's the wildest, most unpredictable, most wide open season that I think I've ever seen. I don't remember us getting to week 17, the final 2 weeks of a season with so much up for grabs. And each week, my opinion changes on who I think could win it all. I guess that's good because, the people alleging the script writing, their arguments out the window, because nobody would have written a script that would have been able to, you couldn't have predicted any of this stuff right here. And you would have had a script where your, faces of the league like Patrick Mahomes and possibly Lamar Jackson wouldn't even be in the playoffs. It's just really wild to see how everything is played out.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you can never predict before an NFL season begins, and it tends to be the biggest influencer, is which teams are going to be healthy and which teams aren't. Our team's a perfect example of that this year. So let's just live in the moment and talk about what we think today, because even though they lost one of the wildest games, I think, in the league in years on Thursday night, I still think the Rams are the best team. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think that the Rams have a real chance to be able to go all the way. When you look at what they have, they've got great quarterback play. They've got a strong run game. They've got game-changing wide receivers. They've got a defense that can really get after the quarterback, young difference makers at every level. So, and a really fantastic coach and coaching staff. So, yeah, I do think that the Rams could wind up, making it to the Super Bowl, possibly winning it. It's crazy to think that for as good as they are, they might wind up being in the number one seed, because of how things have fallen, but here they are. But I look at that whole NFC West, and I don't know which team I would rather play. The Seattle Seahawks are a really tough team. They got a great defense and an explosive offense. The 49ers are a team that, if anybody is battle tested, it's them. The adversity that they've had to weather and still have a chance for, the top spot there is crazy. But the whole division, those top three teams, it's been a dogfight, and it's going to come down to the final week.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to make of the Niners. In fact, I think the last couple of weeks, I would say the Jags and the Niners have been the two double-digit teams in terms of wins that have been really flying under the radar, in part because San Francisco really hadn't played anybody in a while. But they played a desperate Indianapolis team, who, by the way, was quarterbacked very capably last night by 44-year-old Phillip Rivers. But beyond that, they haven't punted since November 30th. The 49ers haven't. And they control the number one seed destiny with 2 home games against the Bears and the Seahawks. So we both like the Rams, but to do it, they would have to probably go through San Francisco, maybe Seattle, we'll see, to get there. What do you make of the Niners?
I think that the Niners are a team that is a really good example of drafting well, because, look, you should not have lost your starting quarterback for, 2 different stretches of the season. You should not have lost your top pass rusher and Bosa, your difference maker, really the engine of that defense, and Fred Warner, and still had a chance. But, and they haven't had Brandon Ayuk, and, they have had other wide receivers have been in and out, and they've plugged young guys in, and they have gotten the job done. They have drafted and developed, and they have really, as a whole, not missed a beat. And so I look at them and I think that, look, they've got an ability to beat you in a number of ways. They can run the football. They can light up the passing game. They have a defense that can, make some great plays, but they have really smart coaching staff and Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, two of the best at their positions. And so I don't know who I'd rather play in that division because there's a lot that can, they could be a handful for you. Just like the Seahawks and the Rams could.
You kind of presented it this way a few minutes ago, but it's like, who would you want to play? Like if you're the Eagles, Bears, Packers, Carolina, Tampa, Seattle, San Francisco, Rams, like of the double-digit win teams, who's the team you'd want to face in the NFC Championship game if you got there? It's not an easy answer at all.
No.
But what's the answer for you?
I think, and this is if I'm equipped, but I think I would like to play either the Eagles or the Seahawks. The Eagles are so inconsistent. And so, you don't know, they're not clicking on all cylinders. So if there's somebody that's vulnerable, they are one of them. Another, the Seahawks, if I can really get after Sam Darnold and get in his face and force him into mistakes, then I would, kind of pick them as the team that I would like to play. Now, look, he did a great job second time around facing the Rams. He had a look in his eye. He was determined. He made plays. They pulled off that win. But as I'm looking at these two teams, those are the ones that if there is a wobble or a little bit of weakness to them, they would be the ones that I would kind of like my chances against.
So you didn't mention the Chicago Bears, who, play the 49ers this week and then finish with the Lions. They, too, could end up being the one seed in the NFC with the NFC playoff path going through Soldier Field. I think all of us a few weeks back would say, that they're more fraudulent than for real. But I'm assuming that you think differently of them now.
I definitely am impressed with them. I just kind of wonder, okay, young team getting to the playoffs for the first time, how will they respond to that ratcheted up level of intensity? And when you look at their defense, they're good. They get a lot of takeaways, but they're not dominant in anything else. And so there's the opportunity. They have had to win games on last-second plays again and again and again, kind of similar how Washington was last year, and good for them for being resilient and everything like that. But you can't always count on the ball bouncing that way, for you, especially when you get to the playoffs. So while I'm impressed with them and what Ben Johnson has done with that team, I don't see them as making it to the NFC Championship game.
Carolina or Tampa in the NFC South? Tampa wins the final two. They're the division champ. They play Miami and then they host Carolina.
Right. I know, but there's something off with this Tampa team. I think if they have the ability to take care of business. They've got experience, a lot of veterans, but they're not, things. I don't know if it's because they had so many injuries and now they get everybody back and they're kind of out of sync. They have really hurt themselves and blown opportunities. Carolina really has an opportunity here, and they're a young team. They're really up and down. They can upset the Packers or the Rams and then get the doors blown off of them the next week. But they're in a good position as well. I guess I'll lean towards Tampa because, they can kind of control their destiny and they've got the experience, but it's not a really strong confidence in them.
I talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, maybe yesterday as well, but in fact, there are two quarterbacks from this weekend, Bryce Young and Malik Willis. Like, I think there are people that, kind of were paying attention and said, who knew that Malik Willis could actually be an NFL quarterback? Who knew that Bryce Young, after, two painful seasons wasn't still worthy of maybe being the number one pick overall? What do you make of both of those guys? Because Malik Willis may have to quarterback, maybe if he's healthy, the Packers on Saturday night.
Yeah, it makes you really, I think that both are a really good testament to having patience and really working with the quarterback. And it probably really would have benefited Bryce Young to sit for his whole rookie season. And yes, I know that some of the adversity he has learned from that and everything, but he should have been able to learn and adapt and adjust. And we saw Malik Willis, what he was able to do last week. Because, look, last year, they basically just ran a high school offense where the quarterback was running a lot, and we saw them run some belly and some
with
wing
him
tee and all kinds of stuff, But last week, he was executing like a seasoned veteran NFL quarterback. And those 3 years of sitting and learning and developing and going through practices and being in those meetings and everything have paid off. Now, he was with the right coach, but again, having patience and bringing them along the right way is really, it says a lot. And their teams, they give up on quarterbacks way too quickly, and we pass judgment on them way too fast because, even look, J.J. McCarthy, they're talking about, is he going to be the guy, or are they going to have to move on from him? He didn't play last year, It takes time. And so I think that those are both really good examples of being patient, bringing the guy along gradually, having support around him. Both of them have strong running attacks, and if you do it the right way, and if you are patient and don't force him, to be something that he's not, then you can reap the benefits of that.
What do you make of the Detroit situation? Dan Campbell's been calling plays since the Washington game. They're now at 8-7. That was not a flukish loss. They got beat, on Sunday, right, regardless of how the game ended. What's the situation in Detroit where the expectations, they went, playoffs, NFC Championship game last year, 1 seed, to this year maybe being out of it altogether? That's the way it looks right now.
Yeah, well, when you lose, not only Ben Johnson, who is the, dynamic play caller and architect of that offense, and then you also lose Aaron Glenn, who was the brains behind their defense, you're going to go through growing pains. And then add in you have, key offensive linemen who either retired or are injured. Your tight end is injured. You've got safeties and linebackers on defense who are injured and lost for the season. Defensive backs. That's a lot to overcome. It's hard enough to kind of keep, moving along when you lose your offensive coordinator. We saw Tampa do that, multiple years. They lose an offensive coordinator and they replace them. They keep rolling. But it's hard to do it when you lose both of your top assistants. Like you said, Dan Campbell has been calling plays because Johnny Morton just, wasn't the answer and doesn't quite have the feel. Well, Dan Campbell doesn't have the feel for it exactly. And again, they have, guys who are learning still to play together, and it's been a process. And so that's why, that brain drain and then the injuries are why Detroit is not living up to the expectations that a lot of people have for them.
Talking to Mike Jones from The Athletics. So let's shift to the AFC, where, like you said, a wild season. The top 2 seeds, New England and Denver, but here comes Jacksonville. Here comes Houston. The Steelers with Aaron Rodgers, they look different in recent weeks on offense. I mean, what are we going to see when we get to Championship Sunday in the AFC?
I don't think that we'll see both Denver and New England. I think it's possible that we could see one of those, but then there's another part of me that would not at all be surprised if we get to that Championship Sunday and it's the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because of the experience factor that they have there. Denver, I thought, was really nasty, and they got exposed on Sunday by Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a team that we have seen Trevor Lawrence really make a lot of strides. Early in the year, it was just short dump-off passes, get the ball out of his hands. Then now they're being aggressive, taking shots downfield. He's got, I think, 4 straight games with multiple touchdown passes and no turnovers. And their defense is one of the leaders in takeaways. So you have to, really be, mindful of them. But, there's something about the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen that I just wonder if this whole thing is playing out for him to finally get that Super Bowl with Mahomes out of the way.
They just
Lamar
stink
Jackson
so bad on defense. They just are not good defensively.
Well, the thing is this, though. So they can get really gashed against the run, right, on defense. But there are times that we will see them give up, 40-something points. But they also, at times, can really be, stingy as far as points go. They're really an up-and-down defense. It's hard to count on them. They're not like a game-changing unit that you really can lean on, but they've been there before. They've made deep playoff runs. And so I think that is an element that you have to take into consideration. They have a strong run game when they use Cook, and obviously Josh Allen can do a lot of things right there. So I feel like you can't count them out. You can't count the Steelers out there. I'm very curious about the New England Patriots because I thought with the way they wet the bed against Buffalo last week, and then this past Sunday, when they were losing to Baltimore, I said, you know what, they're a good young team. They're just not ready for prime time. But then they pulled off that comeback and won in a high-pressure situation. And I'm like, well, they're very well-rounded. They're very efficient, both sides of the ball, and special teams. They really are instrumental. So there's a lot to like about a lot of these teams there.
There's just a story every week with the Patriots, and I don't think I'm buying into it anymore because I think when I watch them, they're legit good. They're so well coached, and the quarterback's playing at a high level. But this past week, it was, Lamar went out of the game, with the lead. Right. They decided not to give the ball to Derrick Henry. It seems, the schedule all year long, and they finish with the Jets and Dolphins. So, we may not know for sure until the postseason. And they're playing maybe as the 1 seed, 2 home games to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's wild to think that a team that we thought had a lot of holes, and instead Mike Vrabel came in here and has really elevated the level of play. I mean, they're back-to-back years of 4-13, and now here they are 12-3, entering the final 2 weeks of the season. And just when you look at their, I don't know how much you are into advanced statistics, but like efficiency ratings on offense and defense, they're in the top 10. Only them and the Rams are the teams that are on top 10 on both sides of the ball. And, that says something. And so they are, I think, a legit contender. We'll see again what happens in those situations where they have a lead, and are you able to keep your foot on the pedal? Because I think that we saw them, they kind of eased up when they were going against Buffalo, and maybe they learned from that and it serves them well, or maybe, it hurts them again.
All right. I want to quickly, and then I'll let you run, but just talk about, the potential openings in the offseason. So we've already got Tennessee and the Giants, right? Those are the two.
Right.
So Let me just ask you real quickly, Zach Taylor, back or not in Cincinnati?
I think he's back.
Okay. Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland.
I think that he's gone. I know that there's some division within that front office over him, but I think that he's gone.
Gannon in Arizona.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone as well. Now, I know that they haven't had, Kyler Murray, and that kind of hurts, but,
they kind of chose not to have Kyler Murray, didn't they?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, he had the injuries for a stretch, and then it was kind of like they were like, you know what, let's go a different way. Let's go ahead, But I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone either.
Mike McDaniel in Miami.
I think that he's safe. They've gotten better results. That roster, the way it's constructed, was kind of problematic. They got rid of Chris Greer. I think that Mike McDaniel might have bought himself another year.
Raheem Morris in Atlanta.
From what I gather, he's okay. It seems like he has the support of Arthur Blank, and that they understand there's time now. I'm curious to see if Terry Fontenot, their general manager, is still going to be there, but I think Raheem's going to be there.
And then what's the deal? Is Pete Carroll one and done or not?
I think that he's safe. I can understand why, but also at the same time, it seems like there's been whispers that Chip Kelly was forced on him and things like that. And they thought that they could get Geno Smith and plug in and win. This roster was not close to contending. It wasn't close to winning. It wasn't. I think they overestimated how good they are. He might get at least one more year while they continue to upgrade this roster, and then put somebody else in that spot.
Is it true that Kevin Stefanski is so highly respected around the league that if Cleveland cuts him loose, he could get a head coaching job?
I do believe that is the case. It's kind of baffling because when you think about it, look, he blew it with Baker Mayfield. He hasn't been able to. Well, Deshaun Watson couldn't, stay healthy, but when he was healthy, he still, was not playing at a high level. Joe Flacco's situation, they thought that he, was done, and then he goes to Cincinnati and is playing great before Joe Burrow got there. So he's made some really costly mistakes, but he is still regarded very highly as an offensive mind and as a coach. And so I do think that he would have another job if he does get fired.
What would be the more attractive opening? Tennessee with their quarterback situation, Cam Ward, or the Giants with a pretty decent roster and Jackson Dart as the young quarterback on the roster?
I'm not sold on Jackson Dart.
Me neither.
He he just doesn't play smart. I wonder about his, instinct, intelligence level, feel. He had 32 passing yards last week.
Yep.
I know that the Giants have, some nice young pieces, but I think I would go to the team where I know that they have a quarterback. Cam Ward has shown some good things. Yes, they still have, holes on that roster, but you have the most important piece, and that is a big thing for a head coach. You're coming into a job rather one where you've got, to find more Band-Aids and bridges to get your guy.
Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for doing this. Hope you and the family are well.
Always good talking to you. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Mike Jones, everybody, one of the best at covering the league. Yeah, there's just a lot that's going to be in the offseason. The coaching openings, the Detroit situation is really interesting. This is a massive disappointment. I know they lost Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Massive disappointment if they don't make the playoffs in the NFC, which is looking more likely than not. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk to Joe Beninati. The Caps have lost 2 in a row, but to the best team in the East currently. They play tonight. We'll get an update on the Caps from Joe B next when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch the show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. Joe Beninati has been the voice of the Caps for a long time now. He's one of the best voices of any local sports team anywhere. One of my all-time favorites, and he joins us here as we all get ready for the holidays. And I was doing the math on this before the show, but essentially when a lot of people come back from the next week and a half, 2 weeks, the NHL season will be half over. The Caps have played 36, 5 more to 41, and they're fifth in that 36 to 41 is on New Year's Day. So we're close enough. What are they? What are the Caps in 2025, 2026?
Kev, I think they're really competitive. I see them at some nights, pushing to be as they were a season ago, a Metro Division regular season champ and a team that was running away with the East. At other times, I see some deficiencies, especially at the offensive end, which bring everybody into the mix. So as of right now, where they are, tied for second, I want to say, in the division with Philadelphia, and hats off to Rick Taka with what he's done there. You asked at the beginning of the season where they would fall. I thought they would be in that top 3 in the division mix with the likes of Carolina and Jersey. Carolina is where I expected them to be. Jersey is coming back into form as they get healthier. And as the Caps get healthier, I expect Washington, Jersey, and Carolina to fight it out in the Metro. I really do.
So Max and I were talking before the show, and Max is a big hockey guy, and he said, the Caps guy, he said that Spencer Carberry publicly kind of pitched because of their lack of success in shootouts. I think they're 0 for 4 or 0 for 5 or something like that. That he actually talked about pulling the goaltender in overtime for an extra attacker. That's not for real, right?
Late in the regular season, when you're fighting for every playoff point in the standings, you will see that from time to time, Kevin. That does happen. But for a coach to do it in like December, January, or February, that would be kind of novel. But the Caps have lost the last 5 games. The Caps have gone beyond 60 minutes. They've lost, whether it be in OT or in a shootout. And I could see where Spencer would be frustrated a little bit. But again, late in the season, the game 80, game 79, you might see that. Before the halfway mark, I doubt that severely.
How good's Logan Thompson been?
Awesome. MVP worthy. And he was just that a season ago, all the way through, the turn of the new year a season ago. I felt the very same about his game, and he's made some refinements, Kevin, to his game that have made him, I think, even more formidable. There are nights, just like everybody has, and this is the kind of season. First of all, the fact that you're counting up to 41 already blows me away. It just feels like we just started this season, and that's because of the compacted schedule to let everybody go for 3 weeks in February for the Olympics. But the games just add up and add up and add up, and things are going to be cyclical. Right now, the Caps offense is, it's off boil. A month ago, they were boiling. Logan is consistent. And aside from a few blips on the radar, he's been, in my opinion, MVP worthy, right there with the likes of Tom Wilson and Jacob Chikrin this season.
So I guess they have struggled to score a little bit at times, especially without Pierre-Luc Dubois and Ryan Leonard out there. There's conversation about maybe being on the in the market for a scorer, a high-volume scorer. What do you make of that? Do they need it?
They need something in that top 6, and they know that. And Chris Patrick is working the phones. But look, Kev, look at the Eastern Conference. Nobody's out of it. Nobody's really selling. And it's going to be hard to make those kinds of deals when people, I think a lot of people are in the same boat. They'd like to add that type of personnel, but there's only 2 or 3 teams that might be in a selling position. So that means the asking price is going to go through the roof. And I don't think Washington wants to greatly mortgage its future. And I think the future is going to be very, very bright for the Caps with regard to how well they've drafted the last 2 or 3 seasons in particular. Like when you look at what's possibly coming through the pipeline, there's a lot to smile about, but that doesn't help you now. We're in the here and now, and Ryan Leonard's return, I think, is imminent. There's some question as to whether or not it may even be tonight. I don't think he's been cleared, though, to play for tonight, but maybe that happens in the next couple of hours. If not, fingers crossed, he'll be ready by the time they return from the holiday break. Dubois is going to be a little bit longer, but not as bad as from what I first gathered. I'm again knocking on wood and saying that this is not something that's going to linger well into March, April playoffs, which I originally thought it might. So knock on wood that he's faster than that. But yes, they are looking, and I would say they're looking down the middle in the center spot.
Caps and Rangers tonight on 106.7 The Fan, 7:30 puck drop. You mentioned just the East. I mean, they're basically like 11 points, the difference between the worst team and the best team in the Eastern Conference, not just the Metropolitan Division. How do you view it? Is it just totally balanced? Is it a crapshoot? Or, is it Florida with their injuries and they'll emerge as the best team towards the end, Tampa playing better right now, et cetera?
For what's gone on in the first, quote, half of the season, Kev, the Eastern Conference has been deeper and better than the West. And you could make the case that the best teams are in the West, the absolute very best, the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Star type teams. But other than that, the East has been making hay against the West. And that's why all those Eastern teams are still in the mix. And then you think about a team like the New York Rangers, who the Caps play tonight, and how strikingly different their record is come road and home. Normally it's the home ice advantage. You look at the Rangers have 18 wins, 13 of them are on the road. They're allergic to their own building for some reason, and they find it incredibly hard just to even get on the board and score a goal at Madison Square Garden. But on the road where they are tonight, they've been a very difficult out. And so many of the teams in the East have been good. I think it's going to flatten out. I still do think the cream rises. And yes, with all due respect to Philadelphia and the Islanders in particular, I think, who are higher in the Metro standings than you might have guessed at this point, I still think it's Washington, Jersey, Carolina in the Metro. I just do.
Yeah. How does that compare? I know Carolina does for sure, to what's going on in the Atlantic, with Detroit having the great start to the season, Tampa obviously always there, and Florida a lot better here over the last 10 games. I'm assuming they've gotten healthier. You can tell me that, but
fans, NHL fans know that the Atlantic Division often features 3 to 4 heavyweights. And Tampa Bay is always going to be in that discussion, Kevin, because they still have 3 or 4 of the very best players on the planet in their lineup. And as long as they do, they're going to be tough to beat. Florida, obviously, as a 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion, knows all about staying in contention until it gets time to get hot. And they're going to get healthier with Tkachuk, and they might even get healthier with Barkov, but that's an ACL. I don't know how much Barkov's going to be able to give them, but even without him, they're still dominant. They're still heavy. They're so experienced. And then, the Caps got an eyeful up close and personal of a Detroit team that's been on the rise for a couple of seasons, that now has a little bit more added strength in goal with John Gibson, who we saw beat Washington in Washington back over the weekend. Those younger players now have a few more games of experience under their belt. Todd McClellan's a very good coach who knows how to go to the whip, who knows how to ride a challenging horse down the stretch. There's a lot to like in that Atlantic, and it's amazing how we started the season talking about Montreal, and then Montreal fades, Montreal rises. It's just been an ebb and flow for so many teams, regardless of division this season.
Any concern about Ovechkin's 8-game goalless stretch here or not?
It's interesting, Kev. When I watch, I thought he moved really, really well on Sunday, and not nearly as well on Saturday in the first go-around with the Red Wings. And I know he hasn't scored in the last 8 games, and he's the powder keg who, once he gets one, he'll get on a little streak the other way. With me, and with regard to watching Alex, it's all about motion and movement, and especially at this age when, he's got a half a season under his belt right now, and those bumps and bruises that he used to shake off with ease at age 20, 25, 35, 38. He's got them now, and maybe they hamper him a bit longer. And then all of a sudden, he has a game where, he's skating well. When he skates well, when he's able to keep into the rush and be part of the formations. He looks like, again, a very, very dangerous player. There are some days where he just doesn't have his skating legs, and now we can see that a whole lot more clearly. But, yeah, are you worried when he doesn't turn on the light in 8 games? Absolutely. As long as he's getting his opportunities, and we saw that, especially in the home, in a recent home game where he was just blasting away, and that's what I love to see. It was the game against Toronto. And especially on the power play, Kevin, Toronto chose to defend a certain way, and all of a sudden you're leaving the greatest goal scorer of all time, the guy with the most power play goals of all, you're letting him sit in his office and crank things up, and that was good to see. His timing was good. I think I know Alex is going to bounce back, and as long as he's creating, picking up assists, I mean, you do a 2 dozen game dive on him, and he's still a point per game guy. 24 points in the last 24 games. I'm not going to complain.
We're talking, of course, to Joe Beninati. Nobody's been doing play-by-play longer than Joe in this market. Joe was an outstanding lacrosse player, lacrosse goalie at Bowdoin in Maine during his college years. Still holds the school record for saves in a season by a Bowdoin lacrosse goaltender with 263 during his college lacrosse days. You know, you grew up in New York, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this as we shift away from the Caps for a moment to talk about you for just a quick moment. Who did you grow up sort of idolizing in terms of play-by-play? So many people in New York, it's always Marv for the most part. Was that you, or was it somebody else?
It's Marv.
It is Marv.
It's Marv. And when I had the chance in the American Hockey League, Kenny Albert and I came through the American Hockey League pretty much the same time together. When Kenny was in Baltimore, I was either in Portland, Maine, or in Providence, Rhode Island. And I got to meet Kenny, and I know him extremely well, and he and his family are just wonderful. But it was an honor, and I was in awe when I would occasionally meet with Kenny and his dad was there. And the first chance I ever had to actually do a live interview or a pre-recorded interview with Marv on the show that I was working with, I'm over the moon, because this is the guy that, you know, my dad was kind enough to leave my bedroom door open enough so that I could hear the Albert call of the game.
Yeah.
And when there's a goal, I'd sneak out, watch the replay, and run back into bed before Mom knew that it was awake. No, it was Marv all the way.
Was it? But it was more Marv doing hockey than basketball, I'm assuming.
Both, Kev. I just, you know, my dad was a New York City firefighter. He was more of a Ranger and Knicks fan than an Islanders fan. And so I gravitated to that side. And whenever my dad was watching sports, regardless, and my father was a terrific baseball player, especially. So I fondly remember listening and watching tons of Rangers and Knicks and Mets. My dad was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And when the Dodgers left, my dad disavowed the New York teams and became a Boston Red Sox fan.
What?
I wish I could still have these conversations with my father nowadays and go, really? What went into that?
Yeah, well, for that generation, losing, you know, the Dodgers and the Giants, by the way, to the West Coast migration, just had to be so traumatic. You know, I've talked to Tommy about it, Lavero, who grew up in Brooklyn, about it before. I mean, that is truly the way that those teams had woven themselves into the fabric of New York City, Brooklyn in particular, with the Dodgers, obviously. I mean, that had to be just one of the most traumatic, devastating things ever.
It was, but then he didn't. Most of my New York family members, Kevin, are Yankee fans.
Yeah.
But my dad would not go there. And he really didn't go there with the Mets. And it's funny because I said he's a New York City firefighter. His house was literally 3 blocks from Shea Stadium. So he could have easily picked up the Mets as a favorite. Yeah. But no, he went to Boston and he became a Red Sox fan.
I wanted to ask you something because I just pulled up a list of the greatest New York play-by-play voices of all time. And there's been polls, you know, over the years. And there's a name here that's very familiar to me. And I'm wondering if he's familiar to you. Jim Carvelis.
Yeah, I remember the name.
Okay.
I cannot specifically remember his style.
That's fine. That's
But
fine.
I do remember the
He did
name.
Knicks games on TV, but did Washington Bullets games in the 70s on TV, and he had a signature call anytime a bucket was made. You know, Elvin Hayes, bullseye. Phil Chenier, bullseye. And that became his go-to, call. And, I just was looking at this list, and I forgot that Carvelis was in New York as well.
Great name, great history, and I like bullseye for empty net goals. If you'll notice, I use that one for empty netters.
Yeah. Man, the list of New York broadcasters, though, right? I mean, just forever, that list. Thanks for doing this. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. We'll talk soon.
Same, Kev. Thanks. I appreciate the time.
Yep. Joe Beninati, everybody, at Joe BPXP on X on Twitter. Caps tonight hosting the Rangers, 7:30 puck drop for those of you who want to listen on 106.7 The Fan. 7 o'clock puck drop, 7 o'clock puck drop. Not quite, with it in terms of my puck drop times for the Caps. We'll do better next time. Max and I will finish up with a few odds and ends and maybe some NFL power rankings for the week next. All right, real quickly, may have a smell test. Just waiting for somebody to get back to me with something on a bowl game today. So perhaps here in 2 minutes. My NFL picks for Christmas Day will be out on Twitter. I'll put those out on Twitter, and then I will be here on Friday with a full slate. So let's do our power rankings. This is impossible right now. I'm just giving you who I think the best teams in the league are, regardless of their recent results. I think the Rams are still the best team in the league, and I think the Texans, quite honestly, no matter how close that game was against the Raiders, are the second best team in the league. So I've got Rams 1, Texans 2, Max. I've got the Patriots 3. Okay. I'm a believer in how well coached they are, how good the quarterback is, how Jake good Mays the receivers are, their route running ability, etc. I got the Chargers at 4, and I've got Denver and that defense at 5, even though Jacksonville just shredded it. Rams, Texans, Pats, Chargers, Denver, my top 5. What about you?
So my top 5, I'm throwing the Chargers at 5. I'm going to go 5-1 because I did kind of forget about them, and I have been forgetting about them all year. That defense is very, very good. And Justin Herbert has been a dog. He's got the Madison beer bump, apparently. So good for him. Number 4, I got the Houston Texans. They're not as high on my list right now just because as a superstitious person, I can't put them that high, and I'm going to have my heart broken. Number 3, the Patriots. Drake May has looked incredible. And I really think it's like they're well coached, like you said. The defense does leave a few things to be desired, but I do think that they can get some stuff done. Number 2, the Seattle Seahawks, and number 1, the LA Rams. Rams are still by far the best team in football. Puka Nacua went up for almost 300 yards on his own with Matt Stafford throwing to him. So yeah, Rams number 1. That defense looks great too.
Really hard to do this right now. All right, real quickly. I do have a smell test pick for a bowl game tonight. The Frisco Bowl being played between UNLV and Ohio.
Ooh.
Yes, UNLV and Ohio. So in the bowl games, excluding the 4 playoff games, unders so far are 6 and 2. And people are loading up on under 65 in the UNLV Ohio game. Let me see if I can get a better number here for myself. Yeah, no, it's 65 everywhere right now, 65.5 in a few places. So I am going over 65, the total tonight, for some action in the Frisco Bowl between the Bobcats of Ohio University and the Runnin' Rebs of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Let's ride,
over
baby.
65. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin Sheehan DC for Christmas Day picks. And I'll be back here on Friday with picks for the weekend, which includes a full NFL slate, including, remember, this weekend, 2 Saturday games. So over 65 UNLV Ohio Frisco Bowl. Good luck. Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy holidays to all of you. I'll be back on Friday. Max, you and I will talk between now and then. Chris Russell is next.